I think many will find their prejudices and fears being swept away in the face of their needs for companionship, particularly in lonely lands.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and again thank you so much if you have subscribed. Please consider it if you haven't yet, and please comment below anything that comes to mind when you watch the video. So this is a very special video, and I'm doing this in advance of a series of videos I'm going to be doing on one author, and this author is Harlan Ellison. So Harlan Ellison is an author that I've been collecting since I was a teenager. So I'm 51 now, and I was definitely collecting his stuff by the time I was 16. So really early on in my reading, I was collecting his things. And quite early on, I read I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, because this was the first book I ever bought by him, and it's in this. And it knocked me for six. I think it's such a powerful and brutal story. And I've noticed a few people mentioning Harlan Ellison lately, actually. And when I first started watching booktube videos, you hardly ever saw him being mentioned, and for some reason a few people are mentioning him, which is really good. So I'm going to be doing some videos on Harlan Ellison this year, but I'm also I'm doing my Ray Bradbury thing and my folktales thing and the history readathon, and also the SF book club thing I'm doing as well. So I'm going to be, you know, diving in between these things, but I do want to do some Harlan Ellison videos. And I wanted to start off with just a rundown of the books I have. There's 27 books here that I'm going to be mentioning. And also, this is going to be followed up a little later with my 10 favourite short stories by him. Most of Harlan Ellison's output is short stories. So he did write some novels, but a lot of his stuff is short stories. There is a load of non-fiction as well, which I'll get to, and I will do a separate video on his non-fiction as well. But in the meantime, I thought it'd be nice to just go over the books I've got, because I've been collecting these books a long time, and they're quite rare, and some of them have been quite expensive, and some of them have just been amazing finds that I've seen them expensive, and then I managed to find them not so expensive and grab them when I could. So because I've been collecting his stuff for effectively 35 years or something, because of that, clearly some of that time there was no internet. So since the internet has been around and we've got eBay and stuff like that, then clearly I have been able to get some things that I knew about but couldn't get before. So I was on the hunt for stuff, and sometimes some of these things I found when I was younger in the wild in bookshops, but it's very hard to find this stuff in this country anyway. I don't know whether it's easier to find it in America, but certainly in this country it's very hard to find them out in the bookshops. So eBay has been very handy for some of this stuff. But let's just go through what I've got. And please comment below if you have any of these books, or you think it's interesting, any of these. Maybe you're into him and you didn't realise some of these books exist. I don't know. So I'm going to start off with some duplicates I've got. So this was the first book I ever read by him, All the Sounds of Fear. And as I said a minute ago, this has I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream in it. It's also got my favourite short story by him, which is Repent Harlequin Said the TikTok Man. I absolutely love that story, but All Sounds of Fear is really good as well. And The Discarded is really good, and Bright Eyes is really good. It's a really good collection. So that was the first book I had by him, and I've got I've got a spare. I found it once, and I thought I'm going to get it because it's good to have a spare. The Time of the Eye, I have 3 copies of. So I've got 2 copies of this. Was it Panther science fiction edition? I've got 2 copies of that. It's a really good collection. And The Time of the Eye is an interesting story, but also Are You Listening, I think, is in this. And Are You Listening is really good. Yeah, I really like that story. So Time of the Eye, and then this is the Granada version as well. So I've got a couple of spares of those, to be fair. But then let's have a look at what else I've got. So we've got Earthman Go Home, which is another collection which was reissued under a different name, Alice in Wonderland. So Alice in Wonderland and Earthman Go Home is the same book. So keep that in mind. It's the same book. But I couldn't resist having both versions of the same thing, even though clearly it's the same stories. Saturday, I was really glad to find this. I've had this a long time, and part of the reason was I was over the moon when I saw that one of the 80s Twilight Zones was written by him, the one with Bruce Willis in it, called Saturday. He wrote another one as well called Crazy as a Soup Sandwich, which is such a brilliant phrase. Crazy as a soup sandwich. Keep that up. Let that linger. What a great phrase. Saturday is a really good story, and I think it was directed by Wes Craven in the 80s Twilight Zone, I think. But anyway, it's a really good story. So it's a kind of classic kind of double, someone's double appears kind of story, but it's really good. So Saturday is the collection that features the title story, and Deathbed Stories is a really celebrated book, and I think I've got two. Yeah, I've got two copies of this actually. That one I got from the shop in Bognor because it's got their sticker on it, and I can't get it off, so I've kept it on there. They do have a tendency to have stickers on their books where you can't get off, so you can get some fantastic finds in that shop, but it is irritating that you can't get the stickers off sometimes without taking half the cover off. So anyway, Deathbed Stories is a really good collection, and I've got a spare of that as well. Approaching Oblivion is another short story collection. When I get going on this, I'm going to go through each collection. So this will probably interweave towards the end of the Ray Bradbury deep dive, and then carrying on beyond that. That's my intentions for the Harlan Ellison stuff. But I'm going to look at these collections separately. So Approaching Oblivion is there, and out of this collection, I think the standout for me is probably One Life Furnished in Early Poverty. That's a good story. Approaching Oblivion. A book that is really good that I've talked about before on the channel because I did a recent reread and review of A Boy and His Dog, and that's The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. Again, a fantastic phrase. These kind of phrases and that kind of rhythm in the title came about a lot in the New Wave period, and in the sort of 60s and 70s. You had that sort of phrasing. I mean, you had like Philip K. Dick writing books like Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. You know, there's a rhythm to it that I think is characteristic of the time. And if you go back further, the Golden Age titles seem to be a lot shorter and kind of, you know, to the point. And these had a little bit of a lyrical flow to them. So anyway, The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World is a really good collection. And that features, I've had this a long time, but it's really good condition still, which is nice. It's got, where are we? Oh, Are You Listening is in it again. Boy and His Dog, The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World is in it. Phoenix is in it. And Asleep with Still Hands is really good. Worlds to Kill is good. Yeah. So there's that collection. And Strange Wine. This one I managed to get thanks to the beauty that is eBay. So that was one I knew about for a long time but could never get it. And then I got that from eBay a little while ago. So added to my collection. Another one is Angry Candy. So this was, I think this was read recently by David Wiley. So hi David. You're another person that's recently been talking about Harlan Ellison, which is great. Because, as I said, I hadn't heard anything about him for ages, and I was just thinking it seemed really strange. But people are starting to talk about him, which is good. And you're one of those people, because I know you reviewed Angry Candy, and that's an awesome collection. This is quite a nice one where he did some collaborations with his friends in the sci-fi world. So there's quite a lot of people that he became personal friends with. And a lot of these people are in the Partners in Wonder collection. So he collaborated on short stories with him, which is quite a nice idea. And I don't know if a lot of people have done that sort of thing. So there was that. And this is a nice double. So this is A Touch of Infinity. It's an ace double. Is it ace double? Ace double. Touch of Infinity. And if I flip it over, boom, 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 The Man with 9 Lives, Harlan Ellison. So these are two quite rare stories that are short novels that they put together. So that's a really nice find that I had, again, quite recently, this one. So that's really cool. Touch of Infinity, Man with 9 Lives. This is a really special one because I read this when I was about 18, and it was another thing that just seemed like quite unique. And again, it's got Harlan Ellison's personality all over it. A Spider Kiss. I love that cover so much. So Spider Kiss is a really important one. And I don't know, because it's had such an impact on me when I was younger, the whole cover, the back cover even, everything about it it's got this extra sentimental value. It just, to me, it just reminds me about why I like reading books like this, which had an impact on me when I was younger. So Spider Kiss is a story. It's got sort of kind of fantastical, magical realism-y elements to it, but it's ultimately about a rock star. It's about a musician, which is slightly different. The original title was Rockabilly. I think it's Spider Kiss in the UK and Rockabilly in the US, which would presumably mean that Rockabilly was first. But yeah, gives you an idea of the content of the book. And you've got some special things here. The rest of these things are quite special. So you've got Slippage, which is a massive collection of unreleased stories on hardback, and that actually includes the script for Crazy as a Soup Sandwich, which is awesome. But Slippage is really hard to find, so I've got that, which is awesome. And this was a big, I mentioned this in one of my, I think it was one of my Advent videos, how important it was when I found this. So this was one that I'd hunted for before the internet was around. And when the internet did happen, I managed to get a copy, and it was so important I got one. I was so pleased to get it. And that's the Glass Teat. So this is him attacking television for the whole book. And it's just one of those things where, you know, he's had such a strong personality that when he, and actually, even his short stories, you can hear his voice in the way he writes. There's something about his style of writing, his narrative voice, that's so distinctive that it's kind of his voice. So when you get non-fiction by him, you can hear that same voice. So I do find that quite fascinating. So the Glass Teat is him ranting a lot about television. And similarly, this is a big collection of his non-fiction. There's a picture of him being grumpy, like he often was. And this is called An Edge in My Voice. So again, those two books in particular, I'm going to look at separately in a separate video. But there's An Edge in My Voice there. And I need to get the other Glass Teat. I haven't got the other Glass Teat yet, which is like the follow-up to the Glass Teat. And I've also got these 5 books here, which are, this is strange actually, because this is 5 books. There's actually 2 books, and they're the Dangerous Visions books. So you've got Dangerous Visions 1, 2, and 3, which around the same time were issued in 1 volume. So I don't understand this entire thing about Dangerous Visions 1, Dangerous Visions 2, and Dangerous Visions 3 being released at the same time as a bigger volume just called Dangerous Visions. Don't get it. But that's what I've got there. So 3 different books of different stories from the big names in science fiction, edited by Harlan Ellison. And recently, I've been involved in a reread of Dangerous Visions 1. Well, actually, everyone was reading the whole thing. Dangerous Visions by David Wiley was organising that. And it's quite interesting because some of them are quite dated, but at the time they made quite a big impact. And a lot of the big names are in there, but they're not always the best stories they've written. So it's a bit weird. But he commissioned these people to do it especially for the collection, which was unusual. So Dangerous Visions, and then I've got again Dangerous Visions, and I've got them in 2 volumes. So volume 1 and volume 2, which again, this was the only way I knew you could get it. But then I've since discovered that there is a bigger volume, which is the 2 books together, called again Dangerous Visions. So those 5 books are 2 books technically. So there we are. So I've got those. So that's all of the Dangerous Visions books. And I've got both versions of the Essential Ellison. So I've talked about this in the Desert Island Books video I did. but I have actually got both versions. So there's two versions here. There's the 35-year retrospective, which was the first time it came out, and then I've got the 50-year retrospective, 50-year retrospective in this one. So the darker colour is the bigger one, 50-year one, and the 35-year one is that one. And there's quite a difference. So I think it's an extra 100 pages in this one, and there's a lot more stories in it. So the 50-year one was expanded with lots of new material, but genuinely essential. It's got some really good selections in it, and you can see a really good overview of his non-fiction, his fiction, his teleplays, and that kind of thing. So that's a really important part of the collection. And then one last thing, I've got this, which I keep in this packet because I don't want it to get ruined. It's got a little rip in it, but genuinely I see this on eBay for like £200. So I found it a lot cheaper than that, and that was really cool. And it's actually one of the first things he wrote, called the Juvies. I think it's also called something like the Delinquent Children or something, or the Children of the Street, something like that. But the Juvies was one of the first things he wrote, and it's about his younger days in gangs. So he grew up quite poor and grew up in gangs. He was in gangs when he was a teenager, and this is kind of some stories. They are short stories that were based on that lifestyle. So it's kind of him trying to say, this is how it was. I've read some reviews that say that it's a little bit far-fetched, but you do wonder if that's because the people writing the reviews that haven't lived that life don't realise that that was actually something that he lived. Or he may have exaggerated. I don't know. I wasn't there. But anyway, the Juvies is a really kind of treasured possession, because I love the fact that I've got it when it's so expensive and hard to find. So that's the other part of the collection. So it's a nice overview there of most of his short story collections, and the two versions of the Essential Ellison, a little bit of his past with that really early collection, and the Dangerous Visions books, and the non-fiction books as well. So there we go. So that's what I'm going to be looking at when I look at Harlan Ellison. So let me know in the comments if you've got any of these, or if you've got an opinion about him, if there's anything you particularly like about him, if you like I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, or if you like the Deathbed Stories, or if you like Repent Harlequin Said the TikTok Man, which is such a great story. And if you have any opinion about what he did on Star Trek or Babylon 5 or anything else he's worked on, Twilight Zone he worked on as well in the 80s. So anything like that, let me know. But in the meantime, thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.
Picture